you, Jose Manuel. Thanks, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the FEP Data Traveling Show, READMAGINE edition with inflation. You'll see. So it's, of course, a great pleasure to be here, to see many of you again, and I hope there are also some new faces so that some of the things I say you never heard, at least. And as usual, first of all, the disclaimer. Do not trust anyone who comes and tells you about data about the book sector, and that includes myself. So you're warned. But so why do I presume to come and tell you a story based on book sector data? Because at least in FEP, we do represent 31 national associations of publishers from 30 European countries. So with a good mix of begging and threatening, I get data from the national associations, I put them together, I try to make them comparable, which is not really possible, but still try to do it, and I try to produce something that, again, makes sense as an evidence-based story, which I would like to invite you to consider more as a conversation starter than as a revelation of some kind of infused knowledge. So, the core data. First of all, how is the market going in terms of turnover? This is net publishers turnover, so without tax, without discount, the net revenues of publishers. We just estimated for 2024 another small increase. So for the third year in a row, we have a small increase. We had a bigger increase 4 years ago in 2021. So net publishers turnover is now almost at 25 billion euros per year. We're still the largest cultural industry in Europe until someone comes and proves the contrary. They might, they haven't so far, so we keep saying it. Turnover is back and beyond the peak level. Peak level had been in 2007, just before the financial crisis. We had reached 24.5 billion euro turnover. Then came the financial crisis and something else. For example, Amazon. Could be, I'm not sure, but something happened during all these years, pretty much until COVID, when the market wasn't doing too bad, but revenues were more or less stable. Then came COVID, which was not as bad as we feared. Overall, for some it was terrible, for some segments it was terrible, for some countries it was terrible, but overall it was not that bad. 2021, big rebound, the biggest single year increase in more than 20 years, most likely because people still couldn't really go to the cinema or to concerts. They had time in their hands, they read, that's good. Then we reopened the cages and we haven't been growing that much ever since. In the last in the last 3 years, what we see is value going overall slightly up, but it's due to price increases rather than volume. Sales in numbers, all in all, have been decreasing a little in the last 3 years. Now then there's the big elephant in the room. If you saw my presentation in Frankfurt, you know already what's coming, because I hesitated for a few years to include it, but we cannot pretend that inflation is not there. We're looking at the 20-year of trend in turnover. So this is nominal, and this is with inflation. So looking at the picture in real terms, we have a very different story. So that I would say maybe we have a problem. Maybe because anyway publishing is there, you're here. It's not like I don't see a sector in total disarray, but objectively the real value today is about 40% lower than the nominal, looking at the 20-year trend, which by the way does not mean that the sector lost 40%. It means that there is a difference between the real and the nominal value. The Real value now is about 30% lower than it was in 2004. Again, it's a stretch to say that the sector lost 30%, but definitely there is probably a need to have this kind of conversation. Also, methodology, what I did was to apply the general rate of inflation as a deflator to the total turnover, so there is some margin of error, obviously. But again, let's say that we could say that maybe we have a problem that's worth talking about. What we've been doing lately is also trying to calculate how this net turnover translates in market value. The trend obviously is more or less the same because market value is net turnover plus discount plus taxes minus exports outside of the European Union, and also you don't have here imports from outside of the European Union. But anyway, we're looking at 35, 36 billion if you add also either the exports or the imports from inside outside the EU. You have a movement that is close to 40 billion euros in terms of consumer spending, basically. Now, by the way, the detailed data are still from 2023 because I will have had the time to elaborate all the new information by Frankfurt. So here is still the picture at 2023 mainly. We are at 585,000 new titles per year, give or take. Is that a lot? Is that too much? Is that little? We have seen a decrease, especially around COVID. Was that an attempt of rationalization, fewer titles focusing more? Is there selective pressure that is pushing down the number of titles? And again, do more titles mean a healthier sector or a sector that's really trying a lot? It's like you buy more lottery tickets because you're desperate or because it's a good strategy. Again, up for discussion. So still we are contributing to cultural diversity with close to 600,000 new titles per year in all categories. With in the last few years a mixed picture. Some countries still number of titles increasing, in some others is going down. But the copies sold in 2022 and also in 2023 in all formats were some 2.5 billion. That's a nice thought. 2.5 billion books sold in 1 year. Once again, I think I said it last year, my colleague Piero Tanasio from AIE calculated that if you stack them together vertically, you could reach the moon from Earth. So a stairway to the moon made of books. That's a picture I like to keep in mind. 14 million titles, give or take, available for sale in all languages, in all countries in Europe, not 14 in each country, obviously, but all together. More than 3 million of those titles are available in digital and or audio format. So there's always something to read, believe me. You know, like if someone tells you there's nothing to read, think twice. Biggest markets in terms of sales, Germany, UK, France, Italy, Spain, Netherlands. When it comes to title, UK, they have the global language. Germany, Spain, Italy, France, and Poland. Spain is high, not least because of the educational system. 17 communities, 17 educational systems. Every single school book has to be published in 17 different versions. So that increases the number of titles a lot for Spain. Plus, of course, the Latin American market is also a very good trampoline. Looking at the main categories, we've seen along the last almost 20 years a very good performance of children's books, especially even more during COVID, because at some point the parents didn't want the kids to spend the whole day in front of a telephone or computer. We see a small slowdown in the last couple of years. Maybe some trends are changing. For example, I've seen it in Italy. There's a bit of a decrease in reading among children. And demographics, at some point, is going to play a role because we have fewer and fewer children in most Western countries. Trade books are at the highest share with a bit more than 51% of the overall market. A bit of a decreasing trend in the last couple of years for academic higher education, maybe because there is also a bit of a trend to use books less and less among university students. And then we have education, which represents usually close to 20%. Education as in K-12, that depends mostly on national policies, so the cycles are completely independent from those of the other segments. Destination exports that went down, although not that much during COVID, have recovered, and again, we're looking at close to 1/5 of turnover that comes from exports, so quite an export-oriented sector, obviously along linguistic lines, so that English, French, Spanish are the main languages for export, but also within Europe, Germany exports a lot to Austria, Switzerland, and so on. Distribution channels, the impact of COVID is pretty obvious. We have been able to collect this kind of data and elaborate it only more recently, but we saw that sales in bookstores and specialized stores that were around half of turnover went down to 44, 43% during the pandemic, whereas online sales moved from 23 to close to 30%. And then there's been a reversal of the trend in 2022, 2023, and it seems also in 2024, but online sales are picking up again also in 2024. But obviously, here, COVID was the main driver of the changes. Formats. You shouldn't be surprised to see that more than 80% of turnover comes from print, and I refrain from saying still, because it's not a linear process. It's not like music or film that when digital came, logically moved into digital. You don't, okay, you can love the vinyl and everything, but having a tape or a plastic disc doesn't really change much the experience, whereas the experience with print book is something different. So there's no linear process towards digitization in the book sector. Therefore, again, people like reading in print. More than 80% of turnover comes from print. Now, two important, very important considerations. One is that this hides hugely different situations behind. STM, higher education, academic, extremely digital. Children's books, almost completely print. Genre fiction, very digital. Erotic fiction, very digital, because no one can see the cover if you read it on an ebook reader. So all kinds of different situations behind. Second, very important consideration, the digital part is severely underestimated. But since I have to work with the material I have, I cannot just make up a bigger number just because I know it's bigger. We have to deal with it. A lot of digital is not captured. It's paradoxical because you would think that digital is easier to capture, but no. Amazon doesn't give sales figures, and they are by far the biggest digital provider in many markets. A lot of self-publishing is not captured. Also with audiobooks have been exploding in the last few years. So 2.5%, 3.2, 3.5. It might not seem much, but the year-on-year increase is huge. And again, I think we're already losing track of the audiobook market, not least because it goes mainly via subscriptions. How do you measure that? How do you count accesses? How do you measure if it's in your Spotify subscription? How do you account, what's the part of the Spotify that you pay that you should account for audiobooks? So again, audiobooks probably by now are 5, 6, 7% of turnover for publishers, and in some countries even more. In Sweden, it's been now a couple of years. Well, in terms of accesses, we don't call it even sales, audiobooks are the biggest category. In terms of turnover, they probably represent a quarter of publishers' turnover by now. in Sweden. But again, it's also difficult to capture. But it's definitely still a huge phenomenon. These are the latest Eurostat data on a small bonus for you. In 2024, online purchases of books and publications. So it's books, newspapers, and magazines in print and digital. But considering that I don't think anyone buys print newspapers online, I think at least the blue part is basically books. Just to let you know that some 15% of the European population buys books online. So, of course, a big driver of e-commerce. And with countries with massive, more than 25% in Ireland, because probably they buy a lot of books from the UK. Well, you also see here a bit of difference on the level of digitization of the various European countries. Even more interesting, another bonus, we had been expecting Eurostat, again, the European Union Statistical Office, to do a survey on reading for many, many years. Finally, it came out, and we already regretted that we had wished for it. Now I'll explain why. But, well, first of all, we get from the Eurostat survey, based on 2022, 55% of men in Europe apparently don't read books, which might explain some very terrible things that are happening these days. At least the figure is only 40% for women, something that we men have to learn from women to read more. But still, a lot of people seemingly don't read books, and that just beats me. And I find it very worrying. But then we go to the individual country figures, and here's where we regretted that the study came out. I'm Italian, and I have to walk a lot to get to my country. And from this close, I can't read, so sorry. Voila, there we go. There's something wrong, not only in Italy, that I know already, but also on these figures. Okay, we might not be Iceland or Norway in terms of readership, but we're not below 40%. So there's something with the methodology. They excluded already, it's people aged 16 and over. Small children read a lot, children's books, but still, and they're out of the picture. I'm sure also Spain is better than the not even 60% that comes out from the Eurostat survey. So, okay, probably the relative positions, yes, Nordics plus Netherlands plus Ireland, they read more than others. We also have a lot more sun and things to do in the open. But still, this, for me, more than the data, is a call for everyone to do more and better surveys of reading, because anyway, reading is one of the most important measures of the health of a society, and ultimately everything we're saying about books and data will not matter if people don't read. The other side, on the same side of what we saw about inflation, just to throw more fuel on the fire of that conversation, in the last 20-something years, general inflation in Europe has been 64%. So prices since between 2003 and 2024, overall level of prices increased 64%. Book prices increased 38%. Why are publishers terrified of increasing the price of books? Of course, you need to keep books accessible as much as possible, but staying this much below inflation is clearly one of the reasons why then the turnover has that kind of gap. In 2023, when general inflation was more than 6%, book prices increased 4%, which looks like a lot in 1 year, but still, it was not as much as, it was only 2/3 of general inflation. 2024, for the first time, more or less the increase was the same in book prices and in general general inflation. And now, my favorite part, the maps with colors. So how did the markets do in 2024? Again, the estimate, because I don't have data from all countries yet, plus 2.2%, with pretty much stability, with volume marginally down, prices up, and value marginally up. Only notable exceptions, Spain and its neighbor Portugal. Spain, have the last slide on the Spanish phenomenon, but again, you'll tell me also what you think about it. Portugal is mainly recovering because Portugal was hit very hard by COVID, but it seems that it's, well, picking up speed. So this is the overall turnover. Since it's preliminary data, in most cases it's just trade. There's no education, higher education in there, just trade, but still it's a good half of the market. Just print books, situation similar, but you see already that Finland is slightly negative. In the last few years, Nordic markets have been doing very well, but all the growth has come from digital. And 90-something% of this growth has come from audio, and probably 90-something% of this audio has gone through subscriptions, which again makes it difficult to measure. These are sales in physical stores, which you see again, they keep recovering in most Western markets, not so much in Nordics, where sales are digital or anyway rather online. And these are online sales, going strong in Sweden, still diminishing in a few more big markets like Italy and the UK, but coming back again, for example, in Germany and Austria, and also in Portugal. Now, the inevitable comparison with the pre-COVID world, turnover has increased a lot, again, but this is nominal, of course. Germany, if you've been following the traveling data show, was the last big market to recover from COVID overall. Now, finally, also in Germany, the result in 2024 is bigger than, is better than in 2019, but 2.4% in 5 years means that obviously in real terms we are below inflation. Print, you see again in the last bit from before COVID, good performance, Italy, Spain, Portugal, not too bad, Central Europe, not the Nordics. All the growth in the Nordics has come from digital. And please notice Finland and Italy, more than 200% increase of the audiobook market in 5 years. Sweden, more than 60%, and probably underestimated because of the usual reasons. UK, again, close to 70%. Sales in physical stores have arrived more or less at the same level of pre-COVID, but we have very few markets now with data available. Until last year, most of these were pink, if not, well, mostly pink, because again, we still have to get back to the pre-COVID level of sales in bookstores in most cases. And unsurprisingly, online sales have been a big winner around the time of the pandemic. How are things going this year? I'm afraid pretty much more of the same. So these are data until March or April this year. So again, of course, trade. Things not going great in Italy and Germany. More or less stable, France, UK, Ireland, Sweden. Good performance in Finland, again, mainly digital services. Good performance in Portugal and probably also in in Spain, pardon, which seems to be doing quite well also this year, which is why I lifted directly from the latest report from la Federación de Gremios de Editores this. Luis already said it at the beginning, to end on a positive note. Spain is the only European market on a 10-year growth stretch, and actually if you add 2024 on an 11-year growth stretch. So is there a Spanish phenomenon? What do you see from Spain? Because, well, you might still complain that things are not great, but you are the only country that has been growing for 10 years in a row. I must say the UK, except for the COVID year, also has seen a good progression every single year since 2014. So, wow. A whopping 3 minutes for questions, but otherwise, definitely we have the break right after, so I'll be happy to hear your views. And again, you don't have to trust me, you don't have to take all this on face value. Match it with your experience and let me know. And thank you very much.